Planning your first Foresight project can feel overwhelming, right? You're probably asking yourself, where do I begin? What tools or frameworks should I be using? And how do I make sure the project actually leads to action rather than just producing another report that gathers dust on a shelf? If this sounds familiar, then this video is for you. I'm going to show you the essential steps you need to think about before starting your Foresight project. Make sure to watch till the end because the last step combines all the previous ones. It's where everything you've done up to this point comes together, so don't miss it. Planning your first Foresight project can feel like trying to solve a massive puzzle with thousands of pieces, and you have no idea where to start. That's where framing comes in. Think of framing as finding the corner and edge pieces. It gives you the structure, the boundaries, and a solid foundation to build the rest of the picture. Now you might be wondering, what exactly does it mean to frame a Foresight project? In this video, I'll walk you through exactly how to frame your project so that it leads to clear decisions, real action, and solid results. But before we get there, let's first take a quick look at why framing is so important to ensure the success of your Foresight project. Framing is crucial because it helps connect foresight to decisions, ensuring that your insights lead to real strategic recommendations instead of just abstract discussions. It also helps you prioritize information. With so many trends and uncertainties to consider, it's easy to get overwhelmed. But framing narrows the focus to what truly matters. Plus, it aligns stakeholders by making it much easier to communicate your Foresight work in ways that resonate with decision makers, getting everyone on the same page. And one of the biggest benefits? It avoids analysis paralysis. If you're new to Foresight, it can feel like you're staring at a mountain of data, unsure of where to start. But framing provides a clear, structured entry point. So you can dive right in without getting stuck. If you skip the framing step, things can quickly go off course. Without a clear framework, you risk gathering a ton of data and insights that don't actually lead to meaningful decisions. You might end up overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information, unsure of where to focus your attention. This can lead to wasted time, confusion, and inaction. So taking the time to frame your project isn't just helpful, it's essential for making sure your Foresight work leads to actual results. Today, I'm breaking down how to frame a Foresight project effectively, from defining its purpose to setting clear boundaries and key assumptions. A poorly framed Foresight project leads to vague insights, misdirected resources, and ultimately no real impact. So how do we do it right? Let's break it down. It's easy to get excited about scanning trends, exploring future scenarios, and diving into all kinds of possibilities. But if you don't have a guiding purpose, you'll quickly find yourself drowning in information with no idea what's actually useful. You might collect dozens of interesting trends, but then struggle to figure out which ones actually matter. You might run workshops and brainstorm wild future ideas, but in the end, nothing connects back to real decisions. And when it's time to present your findings, you risk overwhelming your stakeholders instead of giving them something they can act on. That's why the first and most important step in framing your Foresight project is to define its purpose. Before anything else, get crystal clear on why you're doing this project and what decisions it needs to support. This one step will make everything else easier and more effective. What problem or opportunity is driving this Foresight project? Is it to help a business adapt to changing market conditions? To support policymakers in long-term decision-making? Or to prepare a community for emerging risks? A strong Foresight purpose is relevant, decision-oriented, and forward-looking. But not all Foresight projects serve the same purpose. Companies, industries, and governments use Foresight to anticipate disruptions and stay ahead of emerging challenges. Examples include a tech company using Foresight to prepare for AI-driven automation in their industry, or a hospitality business exploring how shifting traveler preferences could reshape demand. In this case, the Foresight project guides decision-makers in adapting their strategies to stay competitive or relevant. Some Foresight projects focus on reducing vulnerabilities and building resilience in the face of uncertainty. For example, a coastal city exploring future climate risks to develop long-term adaptation plans, or a food security initiative assessing supply chain risks from geopolitical conflicts. Here, Foresight doesn't just explore possible futures, it actively helps decision-makers prepare for risks before they become crises. Foresight isn't just about avoiding threats. It can also be used to identify new possibilities. This could mean a retail brand exploring how shifting consumer values could lead to new product categories, or a biotech company investigating how advancements in personalized medicine could open up new treatments and healthcare solutions. In this case, the Foresight project is about inspiring innovation and helping organizations invest in new opportunities before they become mainstream. Foresight plays a critical role in helping governments, institutions, and policymakers make informed long-term choices. For example, a transportation authority using Foresight to plan infrastructure investment for autonomous vehicles, or a public health agency forecasting the impact of longevity trends on healthcare systems. Here, the Foresight work provides a structured approach for shaping regulations, policies, and frameworks that will remain relevant decades into the future. Finally, some Foresight projects focus less on reacting to change and more on actively shaping the future. This is common in cities developing long-term sustainability visions or organizations going through deep transformation and needing a shared vision to guide them. This type of Foresight work builds alignment, creates engagement, and helps stakeholders see themselves as active agents of change. The question is, how do you define the purpose for your Foresight project? Before you even start scanning signals or mapping scenarios, you need to ask yourself these questions. What real-world problem or opportunity does this project serve? Who will use these insights to make decisions? What kind of action do we want this Foresight work to enable? A well-defined purpose keeps your Foresight work grounded. If you want a worksheet to help you define the purpose of your Foresight project, grab it in the description below. Now that you've defined the purpose of your Foresight project, you might be thinking that a clear frame will help keep everything focused. And that's true. But here's where it gets interesting. Some argue that framing too rigidly can actually limit creativity and block unexpected insights. Before we move forward, let's challenge our assumptions. What if too much structure is actually holding us back? Some argue that setting strict boundaries too early prevents us from uncovering the unexpected. Instead of overframing, some futurists advocate for deliberate ambiguity, allowing for emergent insights rather than confining exploration to predefined structures. Think about it. If we had rigidly framed the future of transportation in the early 2000s around car efficiency, we might have missed game changers like ride-sharing and micromobility. Rather than forcing a fixed framework, consider balancing structure with openness, allowing space for weak signals, unexpected drivers of change, and alternative perspectives. What do you think? Should Foresight projects remain open-ended longer, or is structure the key to impact? Drop a comment below. Even if you have a clear purpose for your Foresight project, there's still a major pitfall that can derail everything. Imagine spending weeks, maybe months, developing a brilliant Foresight report, only to realize too late that the decision makers don't see its relevance. Or worse, that key stakeholders had completely different priorities than you didn't account for. Suddenly, all that effort goes to waste, not because the insights are wrong, but because they didn't connect with the people who actually influence decisions. If you're not involving the right people from the start, your Foresight work could end up ignored, misunderstood, or even outright rejected. That's why step 2 is all about identifying key stakeholders. Who needs to be involved? Whose decision will this Foresight work impact? And just as importantly, who might resist change if they're not brought into the process early? Getting the right people on board from the beginning ensures that your Foresight project isn't just insightful, but also influential. Involve a diverse set of stakeholders, leaders, experts, customers, communities, to get different perspectives and ensure buy-in. The more diverse your inputs, the richer your Foresight insights. Don't just rely on executives, talk to frontline workers, technologists, and even skeptics. Let's say your Foresight project is underway, but as the project unfolds, something feels a little off. Conversations start spiraling, one person is thinking 50 years ahead, another is focused on the next election cycle. Some are talking about global shifts, while others are only concerned with local policies. And when it comes to technology, one team assumes AI will revolutionize everything, while another argues that regulation will hold it back. Suddenly, the entire project feels unfocused, and every meeting turns into a debate about what actually matters. Here's the issue. You never defined the scope of the project. Scope is what keeps a Foresight project from turning into a never-ending exploration of everything. It sets clear boundaries around what you're studying and for how long. Without it, you risk spreading your efforts too thin or missing critical insights that would have been obvious with the right framing. To avoid it, clearly define what's in and out of scope. Which uncertainties are most critical to explore? What key assumptions must be made? So what does scope actually include? It's easy to focus only on the trends that seem most obvious or that directly impact your organization. But what about the unexpected connections, the external forces you hadn't considered, the weak signals that could disrupt everything? If you don't map out the full landscape, you could miss critical factors, and that means blind spots in your foresight work. Imagine crafting a future strategy for the airline industry, only to realize too late that shifts in AI-driven personalization or climate regulations completely change the game. If those weren't part of your initial framing, your insights might be incomplete, or worse, misleading. That's why creating a domain map is an important part of defining the scope of a project. This step helps you define the boundaries of your foresight work, ensuring you explore all the relevant influences, economic, technological, social, environmental, before diving deeper. A well-structured domain map gives you a full picture of what could shape the future, so that you can decide your focus. Even with a well-defined domain map, there's still the danger your foresight project gets derailed, looking too far ahead or not far enough. Without a clear time frame, people will default to their own assumptions, and that's a recipe for misalignment. If your time horizon is too short, you might only see incremental changes, missing out on the deeper shifts that could reshape your industry. But if you look too far ahead, your insights might feel too abstract or speculative, making it hard for decision makers to take action. Take the retail industry, for example. If you're planning for just the next 2 years, you might focus on evolving consumer preferences and e-commerce trends. But what if AI-driven personalization or decentralized supply chains become dominant forces in the next 10 to 15 years? Without the right time frame, you could either miss these game-changing shifts or struggle to connect them to today's decisions. That's why choosing the right time frame ensures that your foresight work is both relevant and actionable, giving you enough distance to see meaningful change while staying close enough to inform strategy and decision-making today. How far into the future should you look? The right time horizon depends on your goals. Short-term, 1 to 5 years, is useful for emerging trends and market shifts. Mid-term, 5 to 15 years, captures systemic changes and industry transformations. Long-term, 15+ years, helps explore deep uncertainties and paradigm shifts. Choosing the right horizon ensures that your foresight work is relevant and actionable. Then you need to think about the geographical coverage of your project. Are you focusing on global trends, regional shifts, a single city? A project on the future of electric vehicles would look very different if you were studying the entire auto industry, one country's policies, or just how a single city plans to build more charging stations. But there's another layer that makes or breaks a foresight project: assumptions. Assumptions are the invisible rules shaping how we think about the future. Every foresight project rests on them, whether we acknowledge them or not. They define what we believe to be possible, probable, or desirable. And if they go unspoken, they create blind spots. For example, do you assume economic growth will continue? Or could we see long-term stagnation? Do you assume governments will regulate AI aggressively? Or will it remain largely unregulated? Are you working with the assumption that climate change will trigger mass migration, or that adaptation strategies will prevent large-scale displacement? Unstated assumptions lead to confusion. If half of your team assumes that air travel will remain cheap and accessible, while the other half assumes rising fuel prices will make it a luxury, your entire foresight project will be riddled with contradictions. That's why defining both scope and assumptions is so critical. Scope tells you what you're studying: time, geography, domains or industries, and themes. Assumptions clarify the lens you're using to study it. Together, they form the foundation of a strong foresight project. Without them, you risk creating scenarios based on shaky, conflicting, or hidden beliefs. But with them, you set yourself up for clear, actionable insights that actually help people make better decisions. Now imagine you're a few months into your Foresight project. You've mapped out the domain, identified key stakeholders, and even set a time horizon. You've got data pouring in, trends, expert insights, weak signals, but something isn't clicking. Every meeting turns into a debate about what actually matters. Some people are focused on technology, others on social change, and a few are convinced economic shifts are the real game changer. Instead of moving forward, you're stuck spinning in circles. Why? Because you skipped a critical step, deciding on your focal question. A Foresight project without a focal question is like a ship without a destination. You might be moving, but are you actually getting anywhere? Without a clear guiding question, you risk collecting insights that don't connect to a meaningful outcome. This single decision will dictate everything that follows. It shapes what trends you analyze, what experts you consult, and ultimately what strategic recommendations you deliver. Get it wrong, and you'll spend months chasing interesting but ultimately useless information. Get it right, and suddenly all your insights start forming a clear picture. So before you move forward, ask yourself, what's the one question this project is truly trying to answer? Your focal question isn't chosen in isolation. It's shaped by the purpose, domain map, and time horizon of your Foresight project. If your project is meant to inform a high-level strategic vision, you might need a broad focal question, like how will consumer behavior evolve in the next 20 years? But if your purpose is to guide an immediate policy decision, you'll need something much more specific, like how will AI-driven personalization affect customer loyalty in the next 5 years? The boundaries you set when mapping the domain help determine how focused your question should be. A broad domain, such as the future of mobility, allows for expansive cross-sectoral exploration. A more targeted domain, like the future of urban micromobility, naturally leads to a sharper question, such as what role will shared e-scooters play in urban transport systems by 2035? The further out you look, the broader and more exploratory your focal question may need to be. A short-term horizon, 1 to 5 years, allows for highly specific questions tied to emerging trends. A long-term horizon, 15 plus years, requires openness to transformative change and uncertainty, leading to much broader questions. For example, in a 5-year horizon, you might ask, how will automation change manufacturing jobs in the next 5 years? But in a 30-year horizon, you might ask, what will the role of human labor be in a fully automated industrial ecosystem? By carefully calibrating these 3 elements, you ensure that your focal question is not too vague to be actionable, but not so narrow that it blinds you to unexpected disruptions. The questions you ask shape the insights you get. Good Foresight questions need to be open-ended. For example, how might automation transform the healthcare industry in Europe by 2040? Not, will robots replace doctors? They could be exploratory. For example, what are potential future energy solutions for urban areas in North America? Or decision-oriented. For example, how should a company adapt to regulatory changes in the global food industry over the next decade? Framing the right questions ensures your Foresight project generates useful, strategic insights. If you're serious about integrating futures thinking into your organization and want to work with me directly, click the link below to book a free consultation call. And if you're really serious about futures thinking, you need to start spotting weak signals of change early. Without a solid understanding of what's coming, you're always one step behind. So watch this video next to learn how horizon scanning can give you the edge. It's your key to unlocking future opportunities before anyone else sees them coming.